Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Wednesday evening. If you know a teacher, counselor, principal, whatever, give them a nice little hug. It's the end of the school year. You know, we're about to go on break next week. I couldn't be happier. I know Tyler is very anxiously awaiting break as well. And so, yeah, we have our graduation on Friday, and then I'm on break for a few weeks, and I cannot wait for that. Tyler, what are your thoughts on break and how excited are you to get out of school for a few weeks?
Well, I'm one of the people who probably could just teach another year straight, like without an actual like summer break.
Must be nice.
I just have enough energy to do it. I love doing it. Today was I was saying goodbye to like the one half of my kids.
Yeah.
First like 3 periods of the day, they took their finals and whatever. That always sucks. I hate these 2 days because saying goodbye sucks. And then I need a few days to kind of adjust. And then by the time Monday rolls around, I'll be very happy to be on break. But yes, it is the end of the year. Tomorrow is my last day. I think you guys have graduations, whatnot tomorrow. And then, then it's break. And I need Chargers football to happen. A Bud Dupree extension. Okay, not bad. A little more over the next month or so. That'll help.
The wrong extension, but we'll take it.
Not the extension I think any of us expected or predicted or talked about at all. But yeah, I think we'll get through it.
Yeah, so we our graduation involvement as counselors at our particular charter school is very heavy. So we are walking the students through basically every step of the way. And I do the announcing at our graduation, so I don't really get to like talk to the graduates that day. I don't really get to like say goodbye. Like I have to go announce names, and then I have to go, introduce speakers and all that stuff. So a few weeks ago, we do this senior day event where we get all the graduates to show up on campus. They get their caps and gowns. I do a speech. Principal does a speech. They get fed. They this year we did a photo booth, stuff like that. It's a ton of fun, and that's where I say like my goodbyes because I know I'm just not going to see them, later on at graduation. So that's definitely more of like an emotional day. Saying goodbye to some of my favorite students is always not fun, but bittersweet, I would say. And then graduation is just kind of like I'm just in the zone. Like I don't really pay attention to anybody else except for what I have to announce. So it's just different for me because I have to do that. But it's a lot of fun. Graduation is obviously super rewarding, especially as a counselor. Like last year, one of my students got to be our student guest speaker, our student speech speaker, at graduation, which was fantastic. So it's a fun day, but for me, since I do all the announcing, it is a little chaotic.
Yeah, saying goodbye to ASB was tough today. I had kids stay after for 45 minutes.
Nice,
because it was very difficult for everyone to just like, all right, that's it. We didn't even end up taking a photo because everyone was distraught and very sad. So it's really cool to be a teacher and to be that connected to kids, and then they just go, and then you pray that they survive in life and make good choices and things like that.
Yeah. One of our students brought us some homemade birria tacos today. Like she just felt like bringing us some homemade stuff, and she cooks on the regular. So it was great birria tacos. And
that's awesome.
It was also doubly great because I forgot to bring a lunch today. But
yeah, there you go.
Yes, it worked out. Never had a student cook for me before, or at least like cook a meal for me before. And that was a good touch this year.
Yeah, someone brought me a cheesecake today, and I was like, "Thank you. That's actually pretty sick. I love cheesecake."
Nice. But yeah, we are here today to talk about some Chargers OTA takeaways. We'll have a few stuff on the offense, a few stuff on the defense. We'll take some questions as we can. Before we get to that point, of course, have to give a shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks, who are the best partner for us. Every show that we do here on the Guilty as Charged podcast is presented to you guys by PrizePicks. Obviously, yesterday was Tuesday. There was no game, but every Tuesday, PrizePicks does several discount projections on the board, usually by 15 to 25%. The Taco Tuesday specials throughout the NBA season are fantastic, and obviously the NBA finals are right around the corner. So Flex Friday will be happening this week. Make sure you opt in and tap the checkbox in your lineup builder to be eligible for the protected play. That's where you can choose squares for any game on the board. If your lineup does not win, you get your net losses back in promo funds up to your promo limit as soon as the lineup settles. So one of the many features of PrizePicks that I personally love, I am very stingy with my money and I hate losing money. So PrizePicks makes sure and gives me a few different opportunities to win my money back if I'm not necessarily hitting 100% on my lineup. So obviously, the Tyrese Halliburton, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, those are the main tickets for you guys on the lineup feature for the basketball finals here. Make sure you go and take advantage of Tyrese Halliburton assists, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Our points generally very favorable. And you can go to the App Store, whatever App Store you use, download the PrizePicks app and use the code GUILTY to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that is code GUILTY to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, so again, no eyes from us on the OTAs. We're relying heavily on like the minor videos that we get, the press conferences, obviously the reporting of Eric Smith and Daniel Popper in particular, Omar Navarro as well from the Chargers side of things. Chris Rim does a great job generally as well. So we're relying on secondhand information. But Tyler, did you have a main takeaway from this week's so far the practices from OTAs?
Okay, the answer is yes, and the answer is no. The answer is no because I feel like this is ground we've kind of tread before, but sort of It's kind of like the Bozeman situation we talked about recently, where it's like, yeah, that was a thing, and some fans are maybe surprised by it, but like we kind of been discussing it. Bozeman's going to start, great. Today's thing or yesterday's thing is wide receivers coach Sanjay Lal mentioning that that he told Quinton Johnson that he is a starter because he is. And, TBD for how long that might be. Same thing with Bozeman. If he starts, doesn't mean he's an 19 game starter this year into the postseason. Doesn't necessarily mean that. But how long is he going to be a starter? I don't know. But it surprised, I think, a lot of fans who have moved Quentin Johnston either completely off their team in their minds or are like trying to trade him in their minds, or they think he's wide receiver 7 in their minds. But you had mentioned, I think you had even shared like at the Discord a while ago, that Quinton Johnson is very much so going to be involved and in their plans. And that makes all the sense in the world. Alex Katzen tweeted, I think this morning, like, who did you guys expect to start at Z this year? Now, I thought there could be some variation. Like, okay, if Mike is the X and Lad's the slot, although apparently he doesn't like being called the slot guy, which I get. I totally get. All his downfield, like, open score metrics are fantastic. Doesn't have to just be like a slot, small, short area guy. But yeah, I don't really know what some Chargers fans maybe expected with Quentin Johnston. They believed in him after an awful rookie season. It's no surprise that they would also believe in him after an improved season. Yes, we've tread this ground before. The mistakes were not great. Some of the games were terrible. You've discussed that. I've discussed that. We've reacted to it. But they believe in him, and if this is a guy who can take another step forward, great. So, like, is there much? Is that news to me? Not really. But I did want to talk about that because I think a lot of Chargers fans saw that quote and maybe panicked. At minimum, there's a lot of buzz around that quote.
Yeah, and shout out to Sanjay Lal. I thought his overall press conference was a ton of fun to listen to. He's very insightful. I don't feel like there was that much coach speak. I feel like it was generally like very honest and open. And so the other quote about Quentin that I liked, and I think again kind of shows where this coaching staff is with him. He was asked about expectations for Quentin's season this year, and he said only one expectation, that he keeps ascending. I can't put a ceiling on it. It is what it's going to be. He works hard. He's diligent. He's self-aware. So he's very much on the right track. And again, this is stuff that I've heard from behind the scenes. They love Quentin Johnston's work ethic, which is not necessarily a huge surprise. Given his background with military parents and things like that, and just like everything we hear about Quentin as a person indicates that he kind of is a Harbaugh guy. Maybe it doesn't necessarily show up on the field all the time, but from his mentality, from his work ethic, like I think there's a lot that the Chargers coaching staff obviously like in terms of who the player is as a person. Obviously there are weaknesses, which we've talked about. There are strengths, which we've talked about, but I think it's very clear that this coaching staff, publicly and privately to me, are very optimistic that Quentin Johnston can continue to improve. And, maybe year 3, he doesn't become a 1,000-yard receiver, but maybe it's an 850-yard season. And fewer drops, stuff like that. Maybe the yak continues to improve. Just because I don't think like the volume is going to be there for him to hit 1,000 yards, but he thinks he can improve. Obviously, we know there's room for improvement, but the coaching staff has been very on point with how much they think they believe in this guy. And for what it's worth, Lad Makoni also said this, a similar sentiment in his press conference.
Yeah, and right now Quentin Johnston, yes, it's very early, but in this terrible comparison, in the same way Jaw Taylor, granted, I guess he is now, took advantage of being the healthy guy last year and the guy on the field last year and the guy, just gelling with the defense enough, I suppose, last year.
Yeah.
I don't really hear a lot about Mike Williams so far. I don't know how much I'm supposed to hear. Do I necessarily care? Do I think he's supposed to be a high volume guy? No. But with Mike Williams, I'm not hearing a ton about him. Again, we're not there, so I have no idea. And with Keandre Lambert-Smith not getting in with the ones and or not practicing right now, Quentin Johnston's the third guy. Like you hear a lot about Makoni, you hear good things about Trey Harris, and Quentin Johnston's right there with that trio. Like right now, he is the third guy in the rotation, standing out the most right now to the coaches. And so he has every right to be a starter out there. And I think we'll see what the ultimate rotation is. Things can change. They can this works better for this game, whatever. But he's earning the right to be out there. And if he takes another, I love Trey Harris. I do think Trey Harris will be a better pro than Quentin Johnston. He hasn't played any NFL football. Keandre Lambert-Smith, wasn't a huge fan, but the potential is there. He hasn't played any football. He's a day 3 guy. Like Quentin Johnston is going to eat these opportunities up early on. And right now, like if you actually read the articles and don't gloss over them, the reporters are saying he's doing well. Granted, there's nothing happening. There's no contact. There's no paths. They're not hitting each other. He's not playing Derek Stingley. But still, like he's earning the right to be out there as the third guy.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a world where Trey Harris passes him on the depth chart, right? There's a world where Mike Williams maybe is a little bit more involved in the red zone department. I'm so curious to see like what exactly Mike's role is going to be once we get to training camp, because in my head, and I think in the head of a lot of Chargers fans, when they signed Mike Williams, it's like, okay, this is their wide receiver 2. Things will just go right back to what they used to be with Justin Herbert and Mike Williams. And maybe that is the case, but the Chargers don't, this regime doesn't have the same kind of, allegiance and experience with Mike Williams as Justin does, and certainly not as the ownership does. So maybe Mike Williams, he's like kind of the wide receiver 4, and the other guys are the ones that have to kind of figure out their roles. And so there is a world where Quentin Johnston is their wide receiver 2, maybe not in volume, but in snaps. And maybe in terms of snaps, he is right next to Lad, and he's kind of their 11 personnel, 12 personnel starter. And then their 12 personnel starter. And then when they get to 11, there's a rotation, because Mike Williams, if they kind of have him on a pitch count, Trey Harris, they could have him on a pitch count as well. They talked about that. Sanjay did, about how Trey and Keandre are kind of behind the 8 ball in terms of their fitness levels because of the nature of the NFL draft. So there's a world where Quentin Johnston just immediately is their wide receiver 2 in terms of snaps. Maybe that doesn't translate, but he's going to be on the field, and that just like the nature of the room, I think is going to lead itself to that. And then obviously he can earn, a bigger role in terms of volume as the season progresses and goes through training camp and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the exact game log for Lad Makoni, because they mentioned, with the coming out of college and having to do all this for, to get drafted in the interviews and the circuits and whatnot. Like, what did Lad Makoni start the season with? 39 yards, 26 yards, 44
They eased him
yards.
into it, and they were much higher on Lad than the other players, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. And they had no Lad on that team. Like there was no other player that was going to be like Lad Makoni. Now there is a Lad Makoni, and so they're going to take even more time, I think, bringing these guys along. Makoni they traded up for, took him a lot earlier in the second round too. So I know everyone wants like these rookies to like just like go. Like you get 500 yards, you get 800 yards. Makoni has 2,000 yards. Everyone's rushing for 1,000 yards. Great, but like if like you have to look at the template of even just Lad Makoni last year, who by all accounts I think was healthy to start the year, 39 yards, 26, 44, 67, 43, 46. It wasn't until I was at a wedding on October 27th that he had his 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I mean that was October 27th for a great receiver prospect that they traded up for and took way earlier than they took Trey Harris, with nobody else on the team as an option for them. And even that took till almost Halloween to get him really involved. And was with DJ Chark being injured too.
Yep.
So not that meant much in the end. So just, be patient. Quentin Johnston is the guy. He knows everything, theoretically. He has more chemistry than these guys, theoretically, and he has the trust and backing of the coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, it's you guys are sleeping on Rager, who apparently, according to Johnny Popper, the Chargers are very high on Jalen Rager as well. NSN says schedule more weddings, Tyler. So I think it's just going to be really
relatives, dude.
Yeah. I mean, your sister's got to get married, so they can figure it out.
Okay, I'll have them get married on the Super Bowl.
There you go.
Chargers will be in. Yeah.
There you go. AFC wildcard round. Let's start slow.
Let's get there first.
Let's start slow.
I got 3 sisters, man. They get the bye week. I got the divisional, the championship game, and the Super Bowl. So you let me know, guys.
One of them gets the game at Arrowhead. One of them gets the wild card round, and then the other one can have the AFC Championship game.
Exactly. And Tyler can't attend any of those games. Golden.
Oh, but in all seriousness, like the Chargers, they didn't have their receiver core healthy at all. So in terms of the snap counts, Lad obviously had a ton of snap counts. He logged 554 on the season in terms of passing snaps. Quentin was 464. Palmer was 428. And then the next receiver after that was Simi Fehoko with 136. So they really only had the 3 receivers that they played a lot. But there's this role, there's this divvying of roles that I could see where, Lad's going to play 50 snaps a game. Quentin plays 40 snaps a game. Trey Harris, Mike Williams each get 15 to 20. And then Darius Davis gets, 10 snaps a game, whatever the case may be. Is there enough for another receiver like Keandre? Maybe. I think that kind of depends on what his special teams role is. But that's generally how I view the snap count divvying up with these wide receivers, is that Lad will be obviously the wide receiver 1. And then Quentin probably at least starts the season with getting, 40 snaps a game-ish, and then the rest will kind of sort itself out throughout the season.
Yeah, I think so. And with the Chiefs, granted, I take that back, because I said, I would have said that Quentin struggled against the Chiefs, but less so in the second time they met them. So with you playing 3 important division games, I think you're going to want to put the guys that you kind of trust to do their job out there early on, which is to them is Quentin. Yeah.
Yeah, and we know that obviously Herbert's going to trust Mike Williams, throw him a couple jump balls, things like that. But this receiver room, I think, is not going to be as instantly hitting with the rookies as people would hope. And you mentioned the Lad stuff, but Trey Harris, I feel pretty confident about playing a role right away. But if Keandre Lambert-Smith is dealing with stuff, and he's according to Sanjay, behind physically, he's losing out on valuable opportunities to learn the playbook and things like that. So I'm not expecting a ton from Keandre. I think he can provide a few big plays throughout the season, and obviously if somebody gets hurt, he'll be that next man up. But this specific roster, it's really difficult to carry 6 receivers up on game day when you have 4 tight ends that you're probably going to carry, and you're going to have the fullback, and you have 5 defensive tackles, and you have 5 safeties, maybe 6 corners. It's just, there's going to be 5 up on game day. And unless Jalen Reagor can take the returner spot away from Darius, we are kind of already know who the main 5 are. And then just the volume needs to get sorted out at at a later point. And then KLS will make the roster, obviously, but his role is probably going to be very minimal throughout the season. And that's not because of him. It's just because the nature of how this roster needs to be constructed.
Yeah, definitely.
Apparently Bradley Bozeman.
I was looking for that. I was looking for that. I have not seen that. Does anybody have? How have I not seen that?
I wonder if that's an Instagram thing.
Oh, maybe.
He's not super.
I think what's his face? Not what's his face. I'm sorry. His wife, I believe, is on Twitter. I don't see it. Somebody, while you look for it.
Oh, he responded a GIF. He responded with a GIF.
Oh, that's boring.
Okay, interesting. All right. Okay, our audio audience is going to take a quick break, and then we will be right back, and our video audience is going to continue right along. All right, so the other thing that I wanted to touch on here is kind of the cornerback rotation. Obviously, very early in the process, they're not really like attacking the football. Cam Hart is injured, but by all accounts from those who are reporting is that it sounds like Tarheeb Still, which is not necessarily a surprise, is really like the only corner who has a rotational role locked in. And it sounds like all of the other corners, or most of the other corners, are going to have like a true, like, of any training camp competition, it sounds like the cornerback room is the main area where that is actually going to be a thing and come to fruition. So according to Daniel Popper, Tarheeb Still, Dante Jackson, Benjamin St-Juste, and Jasir Taylor have all been rotating with the first team defense. He did not note that Dean Leonard has been rotating. Obviously, Triquez Bridges has not been rotating. But those four players, which is, again, isn't a huge surprise. Tarheeb Still is probably your main top corner. And then you signed Dante Jackson to a decent contract. You brought in Benjamin St-Juste. And they've got to figure out what to do with Jasir Taylor. If he is going to be on the team, if he's going to play special teams, where does he fit in on defense? So I think it's, of all of the positions where there's things to sort out, it sounds like corner after Tarheeb Still is, like, to me, the most interesting position battle to potentially keep an eye on in training camp.
Yeah, they said as much, like nobody has a spot. Not like you said, Tarheeb Still has a spot. Like whatever that spot is, he's at least on the field. On the field is his spot. But after that, like I kind of get it, because there isn't like a true, like the depth. There's a lot of depth, as we mentioned. Like we feel very good about the future, maybe even kind of the short term. There are different bodies out there, athletic bodies, experienced guys, but it's not like you can go, there's your corner one, there's your corner two, that's your corner three, that's your corner four. Like it's really just not like that, other than maybe Tarheeb Still, who is still not an unknown, but definitely not a proven true starter just yet. But he will be a starter for them, I hope, or my list from 2 days ago is going to be pretty rough.
I think you're good. I think you're good.
I should be fine there at least. Thank you, Jesse Minter. But I'm open to it. I don't remember how much competition was there last year among this group.
There wasn't like basically none. They walked into the season and it was like Asante, Fulton, and Jasir Taylor basically had the jobs right away.
Which I can kind of get. Like you had Zon, you see what he could do. Like he's put on some pretty solid film. Just weren't sure about the scheme fit. Fulton, you had to start, kind of like John Jackson's probably starting this year. So I get that, but it yielded at the end of the year, Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still, who weren't really a part of the competition, but once they were out there and competed on the field, you went, oh shit, like this guy's pretty good. So I'm glad that they are kind of like, all right, let's shake it up a little bit. No one has an earned spot. Let's see like the best guys that are out there, because they're not one of these guys is like a giant financial commitment or a draft pick commitment. Where it's like, well, we've got to get that guy out there. It's just, no, here's guys, generally speaking, on even playing, an even playing field. Maybe some more experienced, maybe some have a second year, some are rookies we drafted, whatever. Let them play. Let the best guys play. Sounds nice. I wish the offense did that more often.
Yes.
Yes. Particularly at certain spots, but that's why Jesse Minter it is. So yeah.
Yeah, I think with the corners in particular, and Anthony Jackson asking about Cam Hart, he's still recovering from his offseason shoulder surgery. So he is not going to be out there. He said last week that he should be out there for mini camp. That's next week. So I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. But he should be ready for training camp. Obviously, training camp starts, later in July. So he should be fine. But if you're the Chargers, right, like you probably are going to keep the 5 safeties because, Tony Jefferson, I know that they can do the whole practice squad thing, but I kind of think that if he really wanted to, if they cut him, I think he could go sign somewhere else and actually like be a starter, because I think he proved that last year. He says that he's in much better shape. He looks like it so far from what I can tell. If they cut him, I think they lose the chance, like the Ravens, for example, they just lost their third safety to injury. I can't remember his name, Ardarius Washington. He just tore his Achilles in practice. So if you're Tony Jefferson, obviously there's the sentimental connection. His family's in Southern California, things like that. But if he thinks he can go play a starting role somewhere else, I think he would take that. And you're not going to cut Mickens because you need his special teams ability. So you have your 5 safeties. There's a good chance that you can only keep 5 corners on the 53-man roster. So for you to get the best evaluation possible of Benjamin St-Juste, of Jasir Taylor, we'll see what happens with Dean Leonard. I'm kind of disappointed he's not been rotating in with the first team. But the best way to get an evaluation of these players is to rotate them in with the first team defense. And, for this position room in particular, it's an awesome thing that they have 4 preseason games instead of 3, because they'll actually get a full real evaluation of who is going to be worthy of, having a roster spot. And like you mentioned, Jesse Minter, how he can kind of pick and choose who he wants to play where. Benjamin St-Juste hasn't been like super fantastic in the NFL, but he's got traits, man. And if you don't have Cam Hart, you kind of need another guy who has traits. And Benjamin St-Juste makes a lot of sense there. Dante Jackson, is he your zone corner guy? Can he play more man coverage? So there's just a lot of things to sort out. And so there's so much focus on the offensive line, and I get it. There's so much focus on wide receiver, and I get it. But corner, to me, there's just so much more up in the air than I think is really being talked about among the fan base right now.
Yeah, and like you can check my Fitbit. It doesn't move my pulse at all. It doesn't change my heart rate whatsoever. I trust that field players that probably are terrible if we had a different Chargers head coach or / defensive coordinator, but I trust that they'll get this done in the best way possible. Last year, they didn't, other than due to injury, they generally didn't mix up how they Staley would have Zaunt be out there for not rundowns, and then John Taylor would be out there more so on rundowns.
No, it's more coverage based as opposed to down based.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I'm excited to see whatever it is. And if you need to suddenly, because I don't know, there's so many unknowns. Let's say it is Cam Hart is the guy they settle on as their official, that's going to be our guy when he's ready to go. Okay, great. Then he has another concussion and he's out for the year because it's one he's had, 2 of them last year, I think,
or a shoulder injury or whatever.
Yeah, or another shoulder injury, and that's the final straw on that one. So then you're okay, well, we didn't rotate any of these guys at camp at the ones. I don't know. Let's go. I would say not that coaches are that stupid, but anyway.
No.
But anyway, the Chargers are in good hands. How about that?
Especially in the secondary. So like you said, we trust Jesse Minter to figure out what works best for him. But we've said this before. He played a lot of zone last year. I don't think he really wants to be that guy, and he's going to figure out how he can play more man coverage this season. And I look back sometimes and the play that he got out of the street free agents, in the secondary. Taylor Mays off the street 2 days later makes a ton of key plays against the Falcons. Eli Apple off the street a few weeks later, playing key snaps in Cleveland. What he can do with a group that is not established, but he handpicked all of these guys. They're going to get the full offseason together. They're going to get full rotations in the first team defense together. I nationally, there's this perception that the Chargers cornerback room is weak. And I think that this coaching staff really loves this cornerback room, and I'm excited to see how it kind of expresses itself in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, can anyone in the chat remember the play where DiCaprio Boodle got torched in the secondary? I can't. He might have. I don't think he actually was ever.
Dude, they played Kendall Williams in 15 snaps against the Ravens, and I had no idea that he was out there.
Yeah, I mean, they went through. I can't even remember what the final tally was. Between the safeties and corners, I think it was 12 or 13 DBs who had 200 snaps last year. Couldn't tell.
Yeah, let's look now that you say that.
Okay. DiCaprio Buddha only played 4 defensive snaps. So technically, no, he didn't allow any big torch plays.
I'll take it.
But hey, I've seen Brendan Hymas give up 3 pressures in 5 plays. So I know that sometimes backers can be bad.
So Derwin played 1,000 snaps, including the playoffs. Fulton was 827. Tariq still 826. Elijah Molden 761. Alohi Gilman 731. These are obviously just secondary players. Cam Hart 502. Jasir Taylor 353. Tony Jefferson 261. Asante Samuel Jr. 234. Marcus May 112. Dean Leonard 88. Eddie Jackson 51. Eli Apple 47. AJ Finley 44. Kendall Williamson 19, and DiCaprio Boodle 4. So how many players was that? They had 33 total players take snaps for them on defense last year, which is crazy.
That's pretty wild, especially with Derwin playing as much as he did.
Yeah. And as it was pointed out in the chat, I forget where it was. Oh, Eric says Derwin will be backup corner. He basically was a slot corner for them for that second half of the season. So it just adds more intrigue to how this room can get sorted out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we mentioned the offensive line briefly. Continues to be Bradley Bozeman and Zion Johnson. Like that's the competition. Who's going to start at center? Andre James has gotten exactly 0 snaps with the first team offense thus far. They haven't had pads. Bradley Bozeman got several veteran days off in training camp last year. So I think at some point we will see Andre James with the first team offense in the summer periods, if you will. But he is firmly a backup. And right now the starting 5 is set. It just kind of needs who's playing center, who's playing left guard. So that's where we're at. Trey Pipkins remains their first offensive lineman off the bench, and then it is Jamari Sawyer after that. So not a great situation there, but not there. There's offensive lines in the league that have Carson Barnhart would be like their 7th offensive line on the team. So they're in an okay spot, but no real surprises for us. The starting 5 is set, basically, is what this coaching staff is continuing to tell us. They're just got to figure out if Zion can play center or not.
Yeah, I concede the point where, okay, yes, Bradley Bozeman might not be the starting center, but that was with the consideration that Bozeman is your left guard, which again is just very like, all right,
I just don't get it. Like, what's the point?
Now, I forget who it was. I did see someone, not that I watched it, but someone did go through and back and watch some Bradley Bozeman left guard tape with the Ravens. God love him doing that.
Good for that person is. If that was you who watched Bradley Bozeman left guard tape, salute, message me. I need to give you a big shout out or whatever. But
yeah. How do you stay so sane and motivated to do things like that? That was also a while ago, that's for sure. But like, okay, I don't know. I don't for why. Like theoretic. Okay, like again, going back to when we discussed like, I don't know, any left guard option for the Chargers in free agency. It's like, okay, if you want to make the Zion thing work, then maybe Bradley Bozeman shouldn't be your left guard. Like, can we work with the true left guard or true guard, I guess, who can actually step in and just like, we don't have to see if he can still do this thing. Like, we know he can do this thing, like a Will Hernandez. So, yeah, I guess Chargers fans kind of got what they wished for, which is Bradley Bozeman might not be a starter at center. That's the good news. The bad news for some Chargers fans who wanted Bradley Bozeman to not be center is your left guard. How much of a difference does that make? I really don't know. But it would be hilarious if that's actually what fixes Zion Johnson, is you just make computer guy do all the calls. And it turns out it works better for him.
Yeah, I think from a run game perspective, I can kind of get behind Bozeman at guard, Zion at center, because there's just fewer second level stuff with the guard as opposed to the center who has to climb a lot. So like that part I can understand. But a lot of Chargers fans kind of talk about the offensive line as like, well, Zion is the issue with stunts, when it's like, well, Bradley Bozeman's never really been a great pass protector himself, and the stunts are also his issue too. So I don't know, man. Like I just kind of, maybe it fixes Zion and maybe it does, but Bozeman should not be your starting. I get why you would bring him back to potentially start at center. He's the guy, I get it. He knows your system. He's beloved in the locker room. If he's going to be your left guard, I just don't get it, man. I don't get it. I will continue to be surprised if Zion is not left guard and Bradley Bozeman is center week 1. But it sounds like they're at least committed to trying Zion at center, which I guess I can appreciate a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Everyone in the chat is mentioning someone on ESPN said the Chargers are the 2nd ranked offensive line in the league. That's really cool. I guess time travel was invented. They went back to like the 2000s where that might have been the case.
Sure.
Hey, second best offensive tackle duo in the league. All right, sure. Second best
That part I
line.
can get. That part
Second best offensive line. I don't know about that. Someone must be a big Mekhi Becton fan.
Yeah, the Chargers, to me, if you're like ranking the offensive line, I think they would top out at like 8 or 9, because yes, the tackle duo is great, and obviously Mekhi we think will be upgraded, but it's such a weak link position group where it's almost better to have 5 really solid players and no stars, as opposed to 2 stars and 2 question marks and 1 really solid player. You know, and so somebody like a unit like the Broncos, for example, you know, they don't have a true star. I guess you could maybe make an argument for Quinn Miners as being like a star lineman, but they don't have any weaknesses either. They have 5 really solid players. And so somebody like that, like they would rank ahead of the Chargers. You know, the Lions just lost Frank Ragnow, so maybe like not
3
them.
backup interior guys who are all like good options.
I know, but they drafted 2 players I loved from this last year's draft. So
yes,
you know, there's that, and then there's like teams who I think are like very clearly ahead of the Chargers. Obviously, the Eagles, the Bucks, the Cowboys. I would probably still put ahead of them, even though they still have some question marks there. And then there's just these other teams that don't have as many weaknesses. So I would say, to answer NSN's question about strictly the AFC West, so I would have the Broncos first.
I agree.
The Chiefs, I would say the Chargers are ahead of the Chiefs for now, because they lost Joe Thuney, and we have no idea who's going to play left tackle for them. That could be the guy who they signed. I forget his name. Jalen Washington. No, Jalen Moore. Yeah. Could be the player Josh Simmons, who they took, you know, the first round. But we have no idea who's playing left tackle for them. We have no idea who's playing for left guard for them. So I would have the Chargers at second in the AFC West behind the Broncos. And then the Raiders and Chiefs is a little bit more interesting, but I would have the Chargers comfortably ahead of those other 2 teams because their tackle duo alone, basically.
Yeah. Joe Thuney's still on the team. Chiefs are ahead. Joe Thuney not on the team. Too much up in the air. I have no idea what they're doing this year. Yeah. So I would go Broncos, Chargers because of their tackles, and I guess Becton, and then Chiefs, and then Raiders, I think, who, well, Colton Miller's better odds than Joe Alt for protected of the year, so maybe I'm underrating them.
I think the Raiders offensive line can be much better this year. You know, Jackson Powers-Johnson, like starting from day 1 at center is nice for them. What's their right tackle situation like? I know they have
TJ Glaze, who Raiders fans try to convince me is better than Joe Alt after giving up 60 pressures.
Okay.
Alex Kappa, right guard, Dylan Parham.
So Glaze is like unquestioned starter for them?
Oh, I don't know that for a fact. Based on ESPN's depth chart, he is their starting right tackle, and he dominated their snaps last year. And behind him is just Charles Grant, Thayer Munford, Dalton Wagner.
Yeah, unquestioned starter.
Yeah, Gottlieb Ayedzi. I don't know.
Yeah, so I would probably have the Raiders in last. Just because I don't think they have Colton Miller's very, very good. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson can be very good, but they don't have a ton outside of that. So I would have Broncos 1, Chargers 2, Chiefs 3, Raiders 4.
Yeah, which is progress.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Chargers used to be comfortably 4. So second, I'll take. Yes. I'll take.
Second's not bad.
Okay, so our audio audience is going to take another quick break. Our YouTube audience is going to continue right along after this. Okay, do you have any other final takeaways from OTA Buzz or anything like that? We probably should discuss the Bud Dupree contract a little bit, but do you have anything else?
Let's just go to the Bud Dupree contract, which is a 1-year extension up to $6 million. And I don't know why or how or whatever. I got nothing for you, Steven.
Bud Dupree played a lot more than I thought he did. 570 snaps last season. Granted, you know, Joey Bosa was hurt for a lot of it. Khalil actually was hurt for a few games as well. I know that the Chargers internally are very high on Bud Dupree, the leader. They think he's fantastic for the locker room, and I get that. I think like film wise, he's a fantastic edge setter. I think he's a really, really good run defender. I think balancing him out with Kyle Kennard in that second unit makes a lot of sense. I don't think this extension was necessary. Granted, it's only a year and up to $6 million, according to Ian Rappaport, and we don't know all of the details there. I'm sure it will lower his cap hit for this upcoming season.
Right.
So there's some value there, but this feels like very unnecessary to me, given like, they could find, an edge rusher off the street next year who can be the same kind of version of him. So I know they like him internally. I know he's good for the vibes. Khalil loves working with him. But an extension for Bud Dupree is very unnecessary to me.
Yeah, and I don't mean like unnecessary. You don't mean this either, like unnecessary as in, oh, this player like sucks. Like, what, we should just cut this player or whatever. It's just like, okay, so like, what does this do for you this year? Okay, maybe it gives you more cap space this year, but like, why? And I'm sure people will read into that as like, oh, they're freeing up this to do this, and it's probably
gonna be like a couple million.
Yeah, which I'm sure, like, if that helps you in the long run, I guess that's fine. I just don't know. Like, I understand why Dupree is back this year. A lot of uncertainties. He's already under contract as is. I just don't get the extension for an older player. Yes, Khalil Mack is also not under contract next year.
Sure.
But like, I kind of just think he will be. You drafted Kennard, who's different than Dupree. I don't know. I'm surprised they gave him an extension after watching him last year. Like, I really have a hard time figuring out what the specific reason is without getting into too many what ifs, like a slippery slope of like, well, this and then this and then. I don't really have an answer right now.
Yeah. So Bud Dupree just turned 32. Again, similarly to Khalil Mack, like, so he's a power rusher, and typically, players of that kind of profile will start to decline, at like age 31, 32. So he's already on the downslope from what he was obviously in Pittsburgh, best years there. He had 27 pressures total last year. 5 of them were against the Chiefs in week 4. So, and then he had 2 4-pressure games against the Titans and the Bengals when Khalil was out, which is good. But his pass rush win rate last year was 5%. 5, which is not good. It's not good. So again, like, I understand why he's on the roster this year. I understand you complement him very well with Kyle Kennard, who's going to be kind of your, he's not going to play a ton of run defense snaps right away. But I feel like Bud Dupree being back next year is like, you didn't need to do this. He's going to be 33 in February. So you're going to get his age 33 season, which if he takes another step back is just kind of like, I don't know, man. But again, he's great for the vibes in the edge room. Teammates love him. But yeah, his value as a pass rusher is not very high, if at all, right now.
Yeah, and if you were like a locked-in special teams, like core guy for them, like, okay, like I could see that too. You want to retain him, especially if you're committed to Thule being not a special teams guy, but Dupree's not that. So yeah, I was, if you had asked me, yes, NSN says his calculus win rate was better.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's not great. If you had asked me this morning, hey, list 15 players who will get an extension today, see if you can get it, I wouldn't have picked Dupree.
No, definitely not. So the Chargers are very clearly showing, when it comes to like the veteran group, that they will value like leadership and locker room ability, and they'll work around some other deficiencies as players. I mean, same kind of deal with Bradley Bozeman and things like that. So that's probably what's going on with Bud Dupree here. I guess the other bit of news, J.K. Dobbins visiting the Broncos today. He is currently in Denver. I sent out a tweet that the Chargers, who used their tender, restricted free agent tender on him after the draft, that they could still get a compensatory pick for him. That is incorrect from what I researched after today. That tag expired on June 1st. So J.K. Dobbins is free to sign wherever he wants, and it has zero effect on the Chargers.
but I thought he was on the team this whole time. No, I that's fine. I didn't really know about much of the rule either. So it's not something that we frequently see very often. I mean, I think we saw 2 with another team this year. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. RJ Harvey on the Broncos, now J.K. Dobbins potentially on the Broncos. Yeah, it's not the biggest group by any means, but it adds quite a bit. If you looked at, I forget who posted it, but they were showing EPA per rush with a minimum of some number of rushes over the last like decade or something. And I think J.K. Dobbins was 4th or 3rd. It was like Jahmyr Gibbs and then J.K. Dobbins. Granted, it's for him, it's about availability, not really anything on the field. But yeah, I would really hate for him to go to the Broncos.
Yeah, it's a really interesting fit. They have Audric Estime too, so Estime, Harvey, and Dobbins. That's a pretty sick running back room. I'm not gonna lie.
That is.
I don't know. It's an interesting spot because if you listen to Sean Payton talk about RJ Harvey, like he is God's gift to this green earth. He is the second coming of Alvin Kamara. So it's interesting. Obviously, JK, he probably has slim pickings, and obviously he's going to want to play this year. But that's an interesting spot because the Saints, tree. Obviously, the Broncos come from the Saints. Their run game is a lot of gap stuff, and that's not really where JK is best. JK's best stuff has been kind of outside zone. And Sean Payton can run anything. His playbook is extensive, but that's an interesting fit. Calvin says Estime is more scary than JK. No, I liked Audric Estime a lot, but JK just has this ability to break your back a little bit with his ability to hit home runs. So, the availability, like Tyler mentioned, the injuries, that's the big question. But we know JK can still play.
Yeah, and if all it is 2 revenge games per year against the Chargers, neato. But yeah, we'll see. But yes, that would be a bummer for them to get J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah. And just would continue the Broncos' great offseason, which I hate. But,
Yes.
The Broncos are definitely the media darling team this year. So we'll see. That generally backfires, which is good for the Chargers.
Yeah.
But objectively speaking, they have done a lot of very good, smart things so far this offseason.
Yes. And it's amazing how much the Chargers fans' perception of those players have changed once they joined the Broncos, because they're like, let's go get Evan Ingram. And then they signed with the Broncos. Like, that doesn't do anything for your team. RJ Harvey, like, yeah, that's sick. I don't know. Let's get him in round 3 or something. And he joins the Broncos. He's not very good anyway. So I know it sucks, guys. I get it. The Broncos they're good. Like, we got to kind of, I think they will be good.
I mean, they made the playoffs last year, so they were good last year. But the Chargers and the Broncos were very similar last year, where they each beat up on bad teams, struggled against the opposing playoff teams. The difference is obviously the Chargers beat the Broncos twice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as NSN points out, the other 3 teams in the AFC West are getting a ton of media attention. The Chargers, for probably the first time in my life, are getting
Raiders, really?
Yeah, dude. Everybody is super excited about the Raiders because they love Pete Carroll and they love Geno Smith. Geno is kind of like the media's favorite quarterback because he's like that underrated guy. So everybody liked Jack Betch. So they're getting a lot of positive buzz this offseason. But that defense outside of Crosby and Christian Wilkins is not great. Like, their cornerback room, their linebacker room is rough.
Oh, they signed Eric Stokes, by the way. I didn't realize they signed Eric Stokes.
Yeah, he's like their second starting corner right now.
Yes.
We were talking about him as like, oh, maybe he's like a good 6 corner.
Maybe
option.
he could be our 8th guy. Yeah. Wow.
Maybe he could beat out Dean Leonard in camp.
Yeah. Huh.
Oh, wow. Christian Wilkins is in a walking boot. I did not know that.
I mean, obviously they have a few months to go, but he got hurt pretty early last year, I think, right? It was like a few games, maybe.
Yeah, I want to say it was like week 3 or 4 that he hurt his.
I don't know if I'm assuming it's the same related injury. Back in a boot.
So he got hurt week 5. Week 5. But if he can get healthy, man, yeah, he's insane. He had 61 pressures in 2023. And that first game against the Chargers, man, like that was really good. Granted,
it was, yes.
Chargers weaknesses we know, but
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Kevin Kernick says that he has a Liz Frank injury still. Didn't do anything in OTAs. Can't run. Nothing.
Not a small guy either.
No. Very, very large. All right, Tyler. Any final thoughts about OTAs or any other news or thing like that?
Nope. I'm definitely ready for minicamp, and I'm definitely ready to see training camp pads come on. Learn a bit more about these players. Just keep doing your thing, Trey Harris.
Yeah, very, very good vibes. Very limited good vibes around Trey Harris, but you know he's going to be a key piece for them. We didn't mention this earlier, but Sanjay Lal said that he thinks he's going to be a complete receiver in the NFL.
Of course he is.
Of course he is. You know. But again, there's a lot of he's just a jump ball guy stuff around Trey Harris.
Trey Harris?
Yes, dude. A lot of like Matt Harmon, who is the GOAT, loves him, obviously.
Sure.
But a lot of the other people who watched him were just like, oh, he played at Ole Miss, but he can catch jump balls, and that's all he's going to be in the NFL. I'm like, well, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, he is a jump ball guy. Great, but yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't even classify him as a jump ball. Like, not that he can't. Not that he can't make good catches. I think he's more of like an athletic catcher than a jump ball guy. No, that's not going to be. No.
He's much better than that.
I mean, if he wants to be great, like you want to add that to your game, that's sick. But no, I don't think that's his thing.
Yeah, and this is the same guy. Like, I think a big reason why people are doubting him from a national perspective is he ran like a 4.55 or whatever, but he had a sports hernia and it was like a week healthy before the combine. Like he's definitely faster than a 4.55.
He won plenty fine in college. He's not that slow.
Yeah. All right. That is going to do it for us tonight. We'll be back next week for some mini camp talk. I believe that Tuesday is the only day that will be open to the public, or not public, excuse me, open to the media. I wish it were open to the public. I would potentially drive down for that. So we're only going to get some real takeaways from Tuesday, and then we'll kind of have to see how we parse through that. So we'll probably be on a similar schedule next week. We'll confirm with you guys later, but would probably plan on doing Monday, Wednesday to kind of cover our bases there. All right, that is going to do it for us tonight. Make sure, obviously, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff does continue to help grow the show. We appreciate the hell out of you guys. This has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. As always, bolt up.